we want to touch on a few other topics here. So I mentioned some former LSU players. Arik Gilbert, of course, turned in his freshman year after being a 5-star and one of the few 5-stars at tight end in the nation from year to year. That's a rarity. And Arik Gilbert signs with LSU, turns in a decent season. I think he had about 35 catches, 3 or 4 touchdowns, goes to Florida. Only spends about a half hour, a cup of coffee, basically, a month there at Florida. That's pretty much the deal for Arik Gilbert. And what are the realistic hopes that he's coming back to LSU?
Well, I wouldn't say signed, sealed, and delivered, but it's up to Arik. It's not only we're past the invitation process, we're past the prodigal son has returned moment. I wrote that article months ago. We had that intel months ago. Maybe not months, maybe like 2 months or something. I'll have to look, but it was a little bit back there. Right after he decommitted from Florida. It was maybe about 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that, something like that. But things were moving quickly. Now they've been kind of in the background because right now what he's doing is the academics to raise that sub 2.0 GPA. And that includes a lot of rigorous online courses. He's enrolled at LSU right now. So, I mean, people want to say, Arik Gilbert, he's back at LSU as a student. So he's just a short little gallop away from being on that field, Mark. And you know what we're talking about here. When that offense gets Arik Gilbert potentially back in that fold, with that redemption, with that passion, that intensity back, with that focus, with that drive, Jake Peetz's offense, that running game is going to be wide open too as well. But that passing game is going to be absolutely just something sick, Mark. I mean, ooh.
So, Lon, you're telling me that maybe I should move LSU up in my way too early top 25 preseason rankings. I've got them at 20.
Well, that's the thing that I love about it is I love when my teams are like underrated. It seems like they always do really good that year. And coming into 2019, no one was giving Joe Burrow or our offense or our offensive weapons any love. And I loved it. I just loved it. And seeing Joe Burrow on SEC Media Day, just with that funny hat, we're going to do this and this. I was loving it. I was lapping it up because I was like, I'll just ride with you, Joe. Whatever happens, happens. I'm riding with you, man. He just had that swagger. I just loved it. And, I think LSU has that swagger back, Mark. It's not 2019, but it's of the same DNA. And I think, getting Arik Gilbert back is a part of that recipe. So would I say move him up? I'd say move him the hell on up, Mark. I'm saying maybe into the top 10 here. I mean, I want you to underrate my boys. I still want you to underrate my guys. But at the same time, love and respect must be shown here because they're about to testify, Mark. This is a group that is absolutely full of swagger, full of redemption from last year. But there is that championship experience that people aren't talking about. There's that championship know-how. Even from, say some of the transfers we got coming in here, like Mike Jones Jr., he's played, I think, in two national championship games, maybe 3. I think it was 2 championship games, and then he's been in 3 CFP postseasons. So you've got guys who are very experienced as well as very talented, just lined up all over this roster. You've got the deepest, thickest, most talented defensive line in America, Mark. And this defensive line, it's the best in America. I really think they will take that crown and prove that. Hopefully injuries aside won't take that down, but there would have to be a hell of a lot of injuries to take down that defensive line's effectiveness. A lot of injuries. There's a lot of bodies in there, Mark. I mean, we haven't even talked about Landon Jackson as being a huge factor for LSU. He's just recovering from injury. So there's tons of weapons on this LSU team. There's a new swagger within this coaching staff on both sides of the ball. And the special teams has always been consistent, kicking those field goals through the fog in Florida. Cade York, the best kicker in college football, and Peyton Todd coming in at punter, wearing Zach Von Rosenberg's number. I think he's going to be a fantastic punter.
Lon Philip Sullivan on the line from LSU Odyssey. We're talking up the Bayou Bengals, who play UCLA out at the Rose Bowl to open up 2021. Very interesting SEC Pac-12 matchup there.
Yes.
So, Lon, with all the transfer portal acquisitions and, of course, the early enrollees, we got the first wave before spring practice. They were on campus in January. Then you got your next wave coming in. Who are you going to tout as being impact guys that we've never seen before for this fall?
And would you say the rules would include like it has to be freshmen or say like transfers, or would you say like include guys who've just never been in the spotlight as well?
You give us what you got.
Because I've got a lot to work with here, Mark. Because there's a lot of candidates here, but at the same time, I've condensed them to something that I think shows the finer points of LSU and guys who could really affect games this next season. Not just the catchy names and guys of the future, but Tigers who could really win games for LSU in 2021. When it came down to that, I thought, Devontae Strong has to be on this list, but then I had to put him as an honorable mention, at least tied at 5th, just because of all these names that are before him. But Devontae Strong, transfer from JUCO, Mississippi Gulf Coast. This kid, he's thunder and lightning in a bottle that is just ready to break, ready to bust, Mark. I think come the Rose Bowl, he will be a starting linebacker for LSU because he has that speed and that pace to make up that ground. I wouldn't say his coverage abilities are grade A. I'd say he's more of a run stuffing type of linebacker. But, interviewing his defensive backs coach from Mississippi Gulf Coast, Coach McDougal, he was telling me that Devontae Strong has fantastic coverage abilities. So he was really talking him up, saying that he was practicing a lot more coverage with the DBs more than practicing with the linebackers, things like that. But to open up the top 5, I got to go with Chris Hilton Jr. This guy, he's winning state titles in track, long jumping, 40. It's just his times are outrageous. He's breaking Keishon Butte's records, I believe. It's breaking his father's records as well, Chris Hilton Sr. But Chris Hilton Jr., this is a guy whose pure speed, Mark, his pure raw speed makes up for the loss of JoJo Earle, who flipped to Alabama. Chris Hilton, here's the thing. He's so damn fast and such a threat out there on the offense that if you just put him out there, literally just have him running routes, his speed, if he catches a 19-yard pass, it's going to wake up that defense and they're going to be alive to him. That immediately is so dangerous for an offense that's already going to have Arik Gilbert out there. And then, of course, Keishon Butte, who's already, of course, providing the full package there. But, Chris Hilton Jr., I really think regardless of what stats he'll produce, just scheme-wise, he could be an absolute just game winner for LSU this year. Literally. I think if you put him out there, he's going to stretch those defenses. I hope he gets a chance to show what he's made of because his speed is something scary, Mark. But he also has unbelievable yards after the catch ability, as we saw when he won won the state championship for Zachary against West Monroe back in, I think it was his sophomore year season. That was an unbelievable. It was just a screen, and he takes it 80 yards to the house in the Superdome. So this is a kid who's not afraid of the big lights and the bright situation as well. But number 4, Jack Besh, Mark. He hasn't been talked a lot about this guy, but he's a legacy Tiger. His uncle Brett Besh, he was catching passes actually from Jack's quarterback at St. Thomas More and future LSU commit Walker Howard. His uncle, Jack Besh, his uncle Brett was catching passes from Walker's dad, Jamie, at LSU in the mid-90s. It was absolutely crazy when I found that out. And so here they are, poised to reprise their roles at St. Thomas More next year when Walker comes in and joins the team. But for now, Jack will be probably going with Max Johnson at quarterback, or perhaps Miles Brennan, whoever wins that quarterback battle. But Jack Besh, I feel like he's that flex tight end, that receiver who's going to absolutely just dominate over the top. His yards after catch ability, too, very underrated. He ate up a lot of yards on the ground. This is a guy who racked up the numbers serially. LSUodyssey.com just put up a full profile of Jack Besh, where we go into grave detail of his exploits. And second only to Malik Neighbors in 2019, his junior year, where guys were just – it felt like LSU receivers were just lighting it up. Or sorry, not LSU receivers. Louisiana high school receivers were just lighting it up. You had Malik Neighbors, who caught 21 touchdowns. You had Jack Besh, who caught 20. Brian Thomas caught 17. It was a joke. But overall, this guy, it's 3,004 receiving yards at St. Thomas More in his career, 35 touchdowns. But here's the key stat, Mark, 18.4 per catch. Don't tell me this guy's a tight end. Then at number 3, Deion Smith. This is another offensive weapon here. Deion Smith, this guy, he came into camp spring with a little bang up on his toe. He got knocked out of a second-round playoff game his senior year. But when you look at what his raw abilities are, Deion Smith, I see a guy that can stretch the defense, that can absolutely go up there and just catch anything that comes his way. There's pictures, there's footage where this guy is just flying off the ground. And he's got a broken toe as well when he's making these catches coming into early spring. Well, he's not even close to 100%. But what I saw through spring, in the scrimmages especially, was a guy who was very physical off the line. This kid was ready for the big lights. This kid was ready for those bruising jams at the line. That guy was ready for those tough-talking DBs who were going to talk that smack. He was ready for all that. And he punished a few LSU top DBs in that spring game and those spring scrimmages because he was just showing absolute maturity out there. I feel like Deion Smith, he's going to be a guy who's going to do special things at LSU. I'm not sure, stat-wise what he's going to do freshman year, but 500 plus receiving yards, definitely. 5-6 plus touchdowns, I would say so. Then at number 2, Mike Jones Jr. This transfer coming out of Clemson, he had to be on the list because he's most likely going to be a starter with his hybrid abilities. He learned under Isaiah Simmons, had to be a second fiddle to Isaiah Simmons. He made a sick interception off Justin Fields, as you know, Mark, and that CFP in the red zone just shows, his type of ball hawking abilities. This guy, he's that strong safety outside linebacker kind of hybrid role there that I really am attracted to. This guy, he's going to affect the line of scrimmage as well as the secondary. Will he be the nickel? Will he just be playing as an outside linebacker in the 2? Because we're going to have a 4-2-5 most likely base formation with Durante Jones. Will he play in the 2? Will he be part of the 5? That'll be the only interesting thing. But it looks like Mike Jones Jr., coming from Clemson, will probably be a shoo-in as a starter. That's not just what I've been saying. That's just what I've been hearing around LSU. That's just been what his reputation, what his pedigree has set forth for him. Number 1, though, this might shock some people, but number 1, top 5 newcomers for LSU 2021 season, the number 1 guy who I feel like is going to have an effect on games, the number one guy who I feel like could actually win some type of awards, the number one guy who I feel like could really deliver on both sides of the football, actually, the number one guy who could really set some records at LSU, Sage Flash Ryan. That man is unbelievable. That man is special. That man, I think that young man might be able to win a Heisman at LSU one of these days. We'll see if he, starts as purely just a safety or a nickel, or he also plays, some receiver, some running back, some tailback, some, return game. Unbelievable returner, unbelievable guy. I really see a lot of special things for Sage Ryan in his future.